Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the 9th Saito Town Hall. I'm Richard Paris, and with me is David Lancashire. Today, we're going to dispense with the usual quick catch-up at the start, partially because we pushed out an update, a written update today, and also because we think it's a little bit stilted, and we'd be, happy to spend more time with questions with community, and we think we can get, better interest and flow going, just talking through some items that have been important. And so I think kicking that off, the big thing for me has been community. So,
yeah, do you want me to come in on this, Richard? Or
I was trying to elegantly segue into do some radio shit, but I'm not that good at it.
Yeah, no, I'm just waiting. Okay, Richard, keep going. I'm going to closing my calculator, closing Zoom, closing all this stuff. I think maybe that is the right place to start. We've been blown away, and we're grateful to everyone out there who's pushing. I think internally, we focus on building a lot, and we come up for air, and it's sometimes a surprise to see how far back the rest of the pack is sometimes on the economic issues that we care about. We can see us getting some traction and pushing forward in some ways. I think we've made some progress with openness as a concept, like with Sriram, that University of Washington guy. We can see people in other projects now who look at Saito and they talk seriously about, they're wedded to some other network, but they're like, actually, there's something here. But we're very slow in terms of the rest of the industry getting it. And having a community that gets it is not only wonderful, but you guys have been doing such heavy lifting on Twitter, building the community. We can come out with a list of names. I know, everybody knows Brick and Luminous. I think Dickie's introductions to Saito are better than ours. Richard, I got a ton of names like Patrick Robinson, JJ Ward. You guys are just unstoppable, and it's like George goes back to night one, literally. Yeah, it's really important. We appreciate it so much, and it makes what we're doing on the dev side easier because it's a lot less like an uphill struggle.
Yeah, I think there's guys like Pavel and I'm going to get this right, Spiegel, who have done contributed things like Brickblock has. Articles, polished white paper, pushed game live on the arcade, and we can't thank those guys enough. Brickblock's work is superlative; it really is, and nothing's more rewarding for me and David than to have people grapple with the ideas at that level and then work so hard on a piece, on pieces, covering those ideas and expanding on them. But also figure calling out guys like JJ and Dickie for constant contribution and being vocal in socials and being around is also really important. We don't want to give the impression that, the only way forward or the only contributions we notice or care about are the ones we call out because someone, pushed something really impressive. It's a full court effort from everyone in the community, and we really appreciate it. And we do see all those little things as well as the big ones. So yeah, it's been really cool.
That's not true. If you want more praise from Richard, work hard. Meanwhile, Hamsaris they haven't mentioned me. He's doing great work this week. It's fantastic for us because Powell actually, I felt bad Powell's update because I thought it was a Mahjong update. So we pushed it, but we didn't activate the new game on the server. And I think it took him a week. And he's like, guys, what's going on, David? And I'm like, what? We merged that. That's fine.
I thought about asking about that, but I was like, oh, David's got this under control.
Yeah, no, it's totally my fault. But it's great. And it's liberating us in a way to we've got a ton on our plate. And that's, I think, one reason why let's junk the format of the idea. We can give people a 5-minute intro and we go into questions. But yeah, I think community first. I've got to say a thank you to everyone on the team as well. You guys have met Dan. Dan has done an insane amount of work with the game engine in particular. Just stuff like you can now join a poker game and leave a poker game. And God knows how he fixed that, given I wrote the first version of the code that absolutely did not do that in a very complicated way. That's amazing. Sanka has been doing a ton of work with the Rust client.
But also just throwing at him like, oh, it's taking a while with the JavaScript library to hash and sign images for posts on Red Square, and him coming back with a browser integrated WASM like Rust implementation that's super fast and totally changing how that works. So that's been really cool. And it was, we threw that at him in the middle of some really complicated work he was doing, and he took it on like a champ. So
he's doing performance testing in Rust, and we're like, we need the hashing.
Fix the pictures. Victor's getting stun up and running, that sort of stuff too. That's been cool. So
our front end guys are kind of the junior guys on our team, and they're really stepping up too. Especially with Red Square, like it's taken us a while, but it's getting there, and we don't go backwards with it. So it just gets more usable day in, day out.
Yeah. So,
how do you want to do this? I guess the first thing is to say, if you've got a question.
Yeah. That's usually when at the end of my spiel. So we should say that there's an ask a question function at the bottom of the screen. I think it looks the same for everyone. There's 5 in there. Oleg led the way and got one in before we actually started, which is cool. So we'll look at taking those on in a second. I think we've had a couple other things we wanted to touch on before kind of getting into the questions. One was, I think people worry, particularly in a bear market, about project finances, about the health of the project. We've tried to be really transparent and put out regular updates. Obviously, with the uptick in the market generally and the positive, performance for the Saito itself, in the last couple of months, we've kind of in a stronger position than we've been recently. We maintain the roadmap. The details are in the update. But, in fact, one of the things is that amidst all the calls of when marketing, et cetera, we've managed to steer a course, not just of careful spending, but also planning for and thinking out a tokenomics roadmap, which makes us incredibly strong in times like now where we're not tied to marketing plans that bleed tokens like crazy. So we don't have to double down on those and bleed even more tokens just to pay off the last check we cut. And that means we can have, decent performance even in a time when the market's really flat, and we can start to outperform. And that does more for us in marketing, I think, than we could engineer with 1,000 airdrops, because we get, free industry buzz just by performing well, but also people see what we're doing, and it gets them to come in and ask some questions. What are these guys on about? And I think generally across the industry, people are starting to say, oh, this project that if you compare us to almost anyone who launched last year is going from strength to strength. We're not just one of the only survivors. We're doing really well. We're doing much better than a lot of heavy hitters in the industry year on year. And that's because of this very... You're
going to become an insufferable, arrogant community.
I was going to say it's because we've got a very basically fundamentals-based approach. We're not just doing what the industry expects all the time, but rather looking at every step. What's the right thing to do for the project, for the community, for making this happen? And it's getting real traction. So we hope people can see that and appreciate how that's come about, and continue to support. We really appreciate it. And I think
that's been one of the big shifts for me. Is we really used to hold back on stuff. And then it'll be like, oh, we'll launch it and we'll try to get some marketing and media around it. And we've really shifted to okay, that's usable. Let's get it out the door and see if anyone cares. And I think it's really helping us because we're able to focus much more quickly on the stuff people care about.
I think people who've been watching will have seen, if you're watching either metrics, you're like hanging around on GitHub because you really need better things to do. Watching our commit rate, you'll see that we're being, there's a huge amount going through. But I think also if you just watch the user-facing aspects of what we're doing, the pace has really, really picked up. And that's been, I think, a lot of hard work on getting the team aligned and sort of trying to work out how to do what we're doing, which is really kind of rethinking the whole on-chain in a very different, proper peer-to-peer, genuine way, in a space that's full of Web 2 relics and Web 2 thinking and toolkits, etc. So yeah, it's been really good to see the team pick up, the new guys come along and become so effective. It's pretty exciting as we're going around. So
So why don't we get to the questions? I mean, we can talk about anything you guys want to.
Cool. Have you got the list there, David? I can see we've got 6 so far. Oleg's got the big sort of detailed one to start. Maybe that's a good one to kick off on, and we can work down the list.
Sure. You want to summarize for people, or we assume?
Yeah. So Oleg's asking, basically, at the moment we've got the ERC and the bridged Binance chain token, etc. What's the transition to native token going to look like, and how will wallets work? I can kick off on that and say, from my perspective, I don't think the ERC20 and other chains will necessarily go away. I think they actually provide a lot of the answers to a lot of the questions, like what will wallets be like? For a lot of people, they're not going to want to, especially initially, swap to Saito wallets. So those can continue to be part of the ecosystem with good bridges to native Saito tokens. And that'll actually help people build apps that are really usable at the start when people don't have their hands on Saito native. And it gives us a real advantage in trying to go live. We haven't put huge detail into wallet design yet, but there are some key ideas and architectural features I have in mind. Like, there's some things that you can see around the place, like Near do a really great job with social key recovery as a way of making key storage an accessible thing for people who aren't crypto heads. So I think there's a lot of best of breed stuff we can look at, but I haven't personally spent a lot of time going over what wallet architecture will look like, other than to make sure it allows for really simple application building for people.
Yeah, I'd contribute. We've actually got the 12 phrase key. We could move to a 24 phrase key. That stuff's been done. So implementing that's not a problem. It's really just a challenge of the amount of detail you need people to back up. Like, here's one of the key management issues I think we're looking at is we could have a Web2 login screen. You forget your private key, doesn't matter. You want to log into Saito, come here. And we could say, okay, give us your email address and give us a password. And we will merge the two and we will generate a private key from that, so that you don't need to back up your key at all. You can just come to Saito and start using it. The problem is that's not cryptographically secure, right? Like, I can guess your email address. I'm now reduced to guessing your password. So we're taking 256 bits of information and we're reducing it to some much lower brute forceable problem space. So things like that, I think, are like, but for usability for tournaments or leagues or a lot of the Web3 applications where people don't need to save money on, like, they don't really need to have money on their browser, a login like that's fine. So I don't know exactly what we do. I'd say that I don't think anyone cares about this as something that needs to be worked on in the run up to token persistence, because it's kind of like, well, if you can't handle a private key and you can't keep it safe, don't move your Saito tokens onto that private key. It's not a first order problem. I think it's an interesting question, though.
It is, and I think for us, it's also tied up really intimately in app design and adoption, right? We don't want to look crypto correct and announce super secure wallets or anything without thinking through things like UI and how will people actually integrate with this if we're wanting to build easy to use apps, etc. Common problem in the space, but something we're really aware of.
There's not even a checksum on Saito addresses like there is with Bitcoin. So at some point we're probably going to want to add that. It's just, it's not a growth problem. It's a success problem. It's the sort of thing we'll probably have to be worrying about in a year and a half. One thing we were talking about today also, just on the 2FA approach, is stuff like, how the hell are we handling sending people emails? Like you join a poker league or you join a Twilight Struggle league and we want to email you. Duke is running a couple of leagues. He's running chess and poker now. And he's doing that manually to try to figure out, okay, well, if I send people an email, what sucks about it? So that we can start to implement stuff on Saito in a way that solves the problems people have instead of solving fake problems. But even simple questions like, where do you provide your email? Who gets access to it is a really interesting question. We're probably going to have that encrypted in your wallet, maybe, and some kind of permission where you share it with other people. than Twitter.
Yeah, to kind of clarify the problem there a little bit, it seems like an easy thing. Oh, we'll get people to like send the server their key, but we're not talking about having a server somewhere that is like locked up by some junior sysadmin. They're going to be communicating on chain. So if we don't encrypt it, they've just publicly sent their email address on a permanent record. Yeah. Not the way we want to get started with people. So there's lots of questions. Whether
gets spammed by every single crypto project.
And it would be the same if it was a Telegram API key or something that let us message them there. We can't publicize these things. So there's an interesting cryptographic dance that goes around with like, if they keep control of that email address, how do they send it, out and share it, et cetera, et cetera.
Final question there, I think is really important. I missed it the first time. What happens to the liquidity on Uniswap or PancakeSwap? The answer is, well, I mean, we're providing liquidity. Other people are providing liquidity. That doesn't go away. I mean, unless people, I mean, if people move, then I guess it does go away. We're going to continue to maintain liquidity. But if the supply dries up, the supply dries up.
Yeah, I think the exact balances, et cetera, will be tactical on what's most useful for adoption, but we'll likely keep those things alive because it's very useful. Until complete Saito world domination, it's going to be really useful to be able to have people buy ERC20 somewhere, ship them, hold them on their wallet, and then use them when they want to and need to on the network. That's a way better response than experience than being told, oh well, first go to some place you don't recognize, et cetera, and it means people can just use their current tool chains, including things like exchanges, to buy. So
thank you for the question, Oleg. Hopefully that wasn't too roundabout.
All right. Question, it seems to be down the bottom for me, but they've just moved it to the top because it's got the most votes. Are we now in the dawn of persistence?
Yeah, I mean, I guess. For us, it's kind of like the vesting was really important. And that goes right back up to the question about what the hell happens to the ERC liquidity when the mainnet token comes. It's like, well, we want to be dealing with that stuff without new ERC20s coming out, because otherwise how the hell can we manage things if things start going crazy, right? We need to know where we are. So for me, there was the vesting stability. And I think we're there. I think it's a non-trivial part of why the market has done what it's done. Although I think it's also people are learning more about Saito. But so eGold live on the server was another one of the things that for me marked the transition. That will happen this week. So that's happening. And getting Rust, that client, live listening on the network, that was done last week. Richard, how are we with reboots on that? Is that like automatically?
We haven't put that in the automation toolchain in a way because if anything goes wrong, we want it to break spectacularly and explode so that we see the problem as soon as we get it, right? We don't want it naturally recovering and limping along or anything if there's an issue. So we're still kind of at that stage, making sure it's all together. I think another
yes, I'd say yes.
Well, I think my response to that is also partially it's just commentary on how David was answering that. I noticed a few people in different channels and stuff kind of saying things like, would we announce dawn of persistence, like we pull a lever and something changes? I think most people understand this, but it's useful to say again, it's something, it's a description of a state of the project, not the other way around. We're not determining, it's not a devs do something moment. It's have we achieved what we set out to, and is the roadmap panning out to be the realistic progress, for the project, and do we need to adjust it? And I think I'm really proud of how closely it's matched what's happened and where we've gone as a project. And I think that's a testament to kind of sticking to things and really thinking through what we're doing at every step. So I think we can say yes, we're in the dawn of persistence, but it's not like we're making that happen. It's by announcing it, it's the other way around. We can look at the situation and say yes, this is true.
I'm happy. I'm happy to talk about CXs. I saw, like, I think for a lot of this stuff, one thing I've noticed around is like people think the transition to dawn to persistence. What that means is we're no longer worried about the stuff we were worried about Era 1, because I think it's partly what you were just saying. What we said, Era 1 is we got on gate. We're happy where we are with exchanges. We're not going to come back to that till Era 2. And we're going to look at getting another exchange on Era 2. And what you do, if you look at the roadmap, you see there's a whole section that outlines exchanges and what we're thinking. We're not going to be, I don't think we're going to move on this for another 6 months. The reason for this is it would fall on Richard or my plate. We're just too busy for it. Like, there's so much good stuff happening. I'm really looking forward to launching something in about 2 weeks that I think people are going to love. Like, a ton is happening, and our position with the exchanges, we know it's strengthening every day. Because, if you go and you look at the industry, the stuff that they've launched, like, it's just meme coin, shit coin territory. It's all down. Like, Saito is not only up in a bear market, we're up against the few things in the market that are up. And we don't really think this is going to change. We think, or we suspect that it's going to maintain. We're going to have a really nice year. And as that happens, we think our position with the exchanges is going to strengthen considerably. And so we don't feel that it's a good balance right now. Like, maybe in 6 months we'll say, okay, well, we really should do it. Let's pull the pin on one or something. But yeah, like, we're not saying no to CEXs. We've got contacts. We can go back to any of them at any time and say, like, well, how about this price? It's literally, we think that there is going to be a tectonic industry shift, and we're not going to need to pay for anything. And we think that's best for us. It's best for the industry. It's also best for you and the community. Like, the reason that things go on exchanges and dump is that the exchanges are fucking around with their users. They are dumping on them. And we don't need to be a party to this. Like, one of the things I kind of mentioned in the update that we've been thinking about, and we've been thinking about it loosely, is, with multi-crypto support, as that stuff expands, we can do things like we can offer convertibility and sales of Saito directly within Red Square, directly within the Saito arcade. Like, we can actually become an exchange of sorts ourselves. We might even at the margin be able to kind of set up a Uniswap or of something like that like doesn't do the MetaMask fees. I'm not promising this because, like, it's way too much work. It's not part of the roadmap. But I'm saying, like, conceptually, I think there's a bigger picture here. And the bigger picture is actually being a real project instead of being a meme coin, shit coin of the sort that exchanges deal with. We do know that they do come under pressure. They come under pressure for launching all of this shit. And I think Saito is, in some ways, we're trying to position ourselves to be an answer to that, where, well, okay, we'll provide you with some marketing funds. Like, if the lucky early adopters, we might provide them with some liquidity, maybe. But I don't think this is something realistically that we will need to buy. And I think waiting 6 months, our hand is so much stronger now than it was when we were talking with people a year ago, that I can't imagine where it's going to be in a year.
Yeah, Richard? I think adding to that, I think people don't, necessarily see how the sausage is made. But when you talk to exchanges, they want to know two things. One is just the raw USD denominated listing fee you will pay. And the other thing is the marketing budget, in quotes. And almost invariably what that is some tokens you just basically hand to the exchange, which they put into various airdrop or other gamified distribution methods. And they then hope to basically put those in the hands of users and then win back in fees as much of that, even more than 100% if they can get them going around in circles, then they got out of the USD fee. And that's what interests the exchanges. If you don't offer them that, then they just look at serious multiples on the USD fee. Right? That's the game that they're in. And if you look at, like, in the last week, I've had 8, I think I've counted, emails from exchanges delisting tens of coins, right? Because they're done with them. They're not generating the volume. They're not doing those sorts of things. So, that's the other thing that we'd be expected to do, is generate wash volume.
Gate loves it.
Yeah, they love that stuff. But we get offers. I get offers all the time from groups who will help us set up an AMM market making system, which basically buys and sells from itself, bleeding fees to the exchange to prove to the exchange that you've got the volume that they need to take you on. And it just seems to me like that's something I'm capable of orchestrating. David could do it, but like, do we really want to take our eyes off the project to do something like that? And to be dumping tokens underneath the people who've bought and held in good faith. And to me, that doesn't make any sense.
We need to. I think in 6 months to a year, the narrative is our position is going to be far stronger. And it's also, for me, it's like time. Like, I don't know if the community knows this. A lot of this stuff, it's fallen in Richard's lap. And dude has done an insane amount of work, dealt with an insane amount of pressure. And, he's dealing with shitcoiners who don't understand Saito. There's that story of one of our investors who was like, oh, you guys aren't a shitcoin, They figured it out. And it's like... This
is well and truly after like the second or third vesting. They were like,
yeah. They
you guys mean it?
I think they had a research analyst go through it and be like, oh, shit. But... yeah, I mean, we're on a trajectory where, like, realistically, I know people evaluate us in these terms, but it really does boil down in some senses to, are we right? I'm 99+% on that. Like, we can see the problems in these other networks day by day just cracking out. So yeah, I think our position is going to grow. We're not worried about it for the next 6 months. I think if anything changes, we've got contacts and email addresses, and we can fire off some offers. But as long as token price is strengthening, market cap is growing, our ability to do this gets better and better and easier and cheaper for the community.
Well, I think that's the main thing. To do it in a way that is net beneficial for everybody involved. It doesn't involve people coming in on some theoretical sneaky piece of information and getting ahead of a crowd and dumping first. We can do this in a way that's just a net positive for everyone involved, but it takes patience and it takes playing these guys at their own game. We do that well. Listing will be a bonus, but it'll need to be done the right time, the right place for the project, the market, etc.
Next, date or month for staking. I think I said staking happens when token persistence happens. So I think the roadmap update says about 8 months. We want to make sure the Rust machine, which is on the network, isn't breaking, because we need it to be leaning. We need to be leaning more heavily on it for any time we reset or upgrade the network, because we'll be reading an entire blockchain and we'll be doing a lot more heavy lifting anytime we reset. So kind of 6 months, seeing how the Rust does, fixing bugs, making sure ATR is working. I figure there's about 2 months of development directly in preparation for this, but staking happens when the blockchain adds token persistence. It's not separate. That's what it is. So it happens with token persistence.
I think that's there's not really much for me to add there, but it's something that I think people don't understand. We're not talking artificial staking where we're just dumping tokens into a mechanism to redistribute them. This is actual providing service to the network staking. It's the kind of backstopping on the security function in the consensus. So it comes when the consensus is at the point that that's necessary, which is with persistence.
Yeah. I mean, it may also be useful pulling back and reminding people. Like, I think one of the things that has changed in my mind is at the beginning, like, we're pushing this stuff out because we want people to understand Saito, and we want them to be able to come to us and say, this is a really ingenious mechanism. What would make it beautiful is if you implemented a validator system that worked like this, or it would be really beautiful if you did this kind of change. And we've had some of that. Like Brick Block doesn't get enough credit for the staking as UTR rebroadcasting. I don't even know if he thought he was proposing that, but that's what he ended up suggesting. For me, one of the negative things with moving forward is it means that we're more reliant on ourselves to make these kind of decisions. So we're thinking about changes we can make, not changes to consensus, but like, it's kind of like, one example I'm thinking of is, there's this entire proof of stake thing where they're like, oh, and if you have a social fork, you get slashed. And that's the advantage of staking. And it's like, well, we can replicate that cost just by asking people to add a certain amount of money to the blocks they propose. It doesn't need to be a form of work for the network. It just needs to be a form of money that you have or that you've attracted from other users in the network. So we can do things like that that impose the same kind of taxes that proof of stake has in an open system. Yeah, I'm just saying in some sense, it's negative for us to have to be doing this. And it's a sign in some ways of the failure, I don't want to say to engage with the general industry, but of the general industry to even understand the problems that they're dealing with. So, to the extent, people want us to rush into things because they're thinking like, oh, this is going to make Saito a real project. And it's like, that's total garbage. What makes us a real project is organic transaction volume and applications people want to use. But yeah, I mean, we're looking at things and we're seeing, given the difficulties there, it doesn't really make sense to, stand at the wall of the prom and hope, someone comes by and Prince Charming talks to us. Like, that's not going to happen. So here's our roadmap for accomplishing that, given the realities that we've seen out there. And that opens up a world of opportunities for us too, because it means suddenly we may be prioritizing things that actually treat Saito as a form of money, because we will suddenly have a network where Saito can be more of a form of money. But yeah, so it's not an either or. And I think people who are focused on like particular features kind of miss the bigger picture, which is that we're not shitcoining. Anyway, thank you for the questions. The Eagle, I think we answered. That will be later this week.
Yep. Next question, what new games or features can we expect in the next month?
Dan? Seriously, Dan?
Is this the Saito Town Hall question version of a subtweet?
This is the simplified league joining.
I think there are. To try and answer this in a way that's not in-house talk amongst the team. Dan say just making sure we have enough to talk about. There are really cool things in the horizon. People have been looking at some small developments, like what happens if you click on an identifier, a key or an identicon across the system, where you get a little menu of things you can do relating to the person you've just clicked on. That's a huge thing. It's a small UI win, but it enables us to do a bunch of things from there, including just starting a call, sending a file, challenging to a game, setting up a chat group with that person, etc. And I think it starts to really get at the heart of what proper P2P Web3 is about for me, which is about that person's a key on the network, I'm a key on the network. We can talk to each other or connect and do whatever we like with any of the software we're running without any intermediation. No one's in between us saying, you need to do this or you need permission to do that, whether it's sending someone a tip or, just a file or making a call with them or playing chess with them. So that's one of the things I'm actually really excited about, which seems kind of low key. We do have quite a few other things that are cool coming up. Is there anything you wanted to kind of shadow, David?
I can give a couple of things. Maybe if people want to chat about them, we'll go into more detail. I'm really pleased with what Victor's working on. What we're doing is, like, if you join Red Square, you've got chat, and it's browsers that are connecting to the blockchain that's run by another node, which is in this case the server. What we're doing is we are setting it up so that if you've got contacts in your contact list, you will try to create a direct peer-to-peer connection with them that is actually on the blockchain level. And we're going to try to use this, if you've got a live peer-to-peer connection with people, to do a bunch of really interesting things. And I don't think, like, people are talking Elon Musk on Twitter and it's like, put content in transactions. It's not just that. It's if Richard and I are both connected to the blockchain, but we're also both connected as peers. Well, if tweets are in transactions, Richard can start getting Twitter content from me directly, and it doesn't even need to go on chain. So we can start moving towards systems where not all of the content even needs to come from the chain, but, like, you've got decentralized curation. we've got something coming out, which I'm really excited about, but I'm not going to tell you about it because no one's found it yet in GitHub. Where
it's the Easter egg.
Where, yeah, we've been a bit sly with it, but where if you're connected to me, there's a reason that you want to be connected to me peer-to-peer. That's related to the content that I'm archiving or the materials that I have, right? Like this is, to me, what's really exciting about moving towards this peer-to-peer thing. And you can see, like, we look at the industry and everyone's still trapped there. Or they're like, oh, well, that's layer 2 or it's layer 3. And it's like, it's all the same layer, right? It's just like you've got a cryptographic key and you're connected and you can bootstrap this off-chain stuff or you can bootstrap this L2 stuff. So the peer-to-peer connections is a huge thing. There's this other thing that I'm teasing you guys with, but you'll see it within about a week or two. We've got a bunch of games like the Magic stuff. Arcs is moving forward with it. Some community members, Dodo, like they've done some brilliant artwork for it. It's great. We would not be moving forward with this stuff unless people were able to help because we don't have the time. Like I can't pull away and be like, okay, let's map images to these cards. That's happening with Arcs. We've got constant improvements like the leaderboards and the leagues and the flow there. I think right now it's a mess. I think we'd all agree. We're working to improve it. Like there are other games that are coming. There are other applications that are coming. It's we can talk about it specifically in the next month. I think we'll get the peer-to-peer stuff out. I think we'll get e-gold. A lot is like feature improvements too. Like right now, if you want to set up a crypto game, you got to go into that advanced options. And you've got to create the game when it starts. And so no one uses it, right? We're moving towards getting those menus into the game. So you could be in a game of Quake and you could flip on the crypto switch and the game engine will say, hey, do you want to play at, 2 Tron a kill or something like that? And it becomes a lot easier for people spontaneously to do this. Like tipping in Red Square, that sort of thing. So, as we talk about things like e-gold integration, as we talk about things like other crypto integration, it's not necessarily new features. It's often looking and saying, well, look, we've done this, but it's really a demo and it's not being used. And it's not being used because it's not useful enough or the usability isn't there. And how do we fix that? And a bunch of this stuff is happening. I think half of our time is probably trying to fix things and fixing the UI and the UX as much as anything else. Dan, that's your answer for me. Dan's got his own answer though, so.
You can post anytime, Dan. This I think is a really good question. The next one that's popped to the top. Are we on track to having enough TX volume before token persistence goes live? Do you want to tackle this first, David, or should I?
I can give an answer. You have an opinion?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very simple one. Not yet, no. And that's one of the huge challenges in front of the project. That's why I think it's a good question, because I think it's quite perceptive. And it's the reason that we're working on application suite, etc., not just waiting for magical devs to come and build the killer app on top of this cool thing we did. But I think rather standing shoulder to shoulder with anybody else who wants to do that and getting on with it, of building the community and transaction volume that we need to support that. I think we can see real improvements, and I think being able to move from games which are kind of zero, there's a zero risk thing with games. If your game dies on chain, you don't really mind if you're just playing with a friend, to social, where people have a bit more invested and stuff. We can see, I think, the really rapid development at the moment, and that is getting attention. It's getting people involved, and we can see a trajectory where we will have, but it's not guaranteed, and it requires continued hard work is my short answer.
Yeah, I'd say I think we're getting organic growth with games, but it's slow. And when I take a look at the games, we've got a couple that are getting organic growth, and we spend some time on stuff and we push it out and nothing happens, right? Like the open source clone we've done of Pandemic is doing nothing for us, like literally nothing. A couple of people spent a significant amount of time on it, not significant, but like
non-trivial.
Yeah, non-trivial, and it's we look at this stuff and we're trying to figure out. Quake for me has been very interesting because it shows that people want to connect to, I don't want to say branded experiences, but that sort of thing, things where people have a historical interest or some other connection to enjoy, and getting other games on as opposed to building our own seems to me to be a worthwhile thing to explore. But I see games, I think it's growing organically. It's not growing fast enough. Red Square is interesting because it brings in these other use cases. The funny story for me with Red Square is everyone's like, why can I click the button more than once? It's broken. And I'm like, it's not broken. See how many times people click the button. Like, it might be a better experience because someone is able to like something 75 times. And so, yeah, I think that one of the reasons that we are pushing ahead with Red Square is because we think it's better for transaction volume. It gives us a different interface. It gives us a mobile-friendly interface before we get the arcade fixed on that. And it lets us experiment. Are we on track? We're also going to be needing, I think, to make some changes to, I think we're going to do that kind of, when you make a block, you kind of say that you've got the money and here it is, I can sign that I've got it, so that if someone is stupid enough to attack the network, we can actually defensively fork in the way that proof of stake does. That drives up cost of attack spectacularly. But yeah, I think, are we on track? I think we're moving forward with transaction volume, but not fast enough that transaction volume alone is close to where we need it to be. Richard, does that sound?
Yeah, I think it's one of the things that drives us. I think it's one of the reasons we concentrate on the things that we do, and maybe explains some of the way we work. I feel positive about it, but I don't want to give people a sense of, we're just got to tick this box and turn that handle and everything works. This is part of the difference between Saito and a lot of projects. We're not using some kind of block reward or instant internet cash to just kind of get 1,000 people interested in what we're doing because we're giving away money. We need to build genuine interest and build something good enough for other people to come along and participate in, whether they're building something on it or using things that are built for it. That's a real challenge for us. I think something we're making progress on, but yeah, it's not simple, and it's a challenge a lot of almost every project just ignores by either handing it off to someone else or structuring themselves in a way where they have a limited roadmap or a limited lifespan. And they kind of just pay for it out of tomorrow's token price, basically.
I will say this. I think that a lot of the stuff, like crypto's used to, announcements, because people want something they can dump around. And I don't think, maybe they don't want it done. There's a lot of stuff I look at where I say, okay, well, we've got it, but it's just not good enough. Like the crypto integration in the arcade, like it's just not good enough. It's there. There is so much on our plate. I think there's a temptation in the dev team that I've kind of seen historically, like, okay, well, we've done that. We can now move on to this other pressing problem. And I think we're only now able to, like with Con and Victor doing a lot of heavy pulling, and Dan, who's taken a ton of stuff just on his lap, like we're overworked, but even then now we're able to kind of go back and say, well, this isn't good enough. What is broken about it? And I think we're trying to, when we do that, we're trying to focus on the things where we can see it as something that people are interested in or something that's driving transaction volume, but it's not good enough. So I'm hoping that as we improve those features, like as you can get into Quake and you can play, 0.001 Eagle per kill or whatever, a lot of the stuff that we've done previously will kind of acquire new relevance and will help onboard users in other communities to come and play on Saito, because it helps them as well as us. But yeah, I think transaction volume, it's one of the big things I look at, and I think it's one of the big metrics that people should be looking at as they're looking at Saito. I think the Green's secondary question answers yes.
Yeah. I think we kind of answered this. Dawn of Persistence was the name for the second era, so that the kind of answer we gave before covers this. So yeah. If for anyone's reference, go back and check the answer to that. We've got quite a few questions in the queue, so let's try and give them 15 minutes or so. We should kind of pile through.
20-minute answers.
UI UX specialists. That's something we've kind of been looking at. We have varying needs across varying parts of what we're building. A lot of the work we've done recently is to get the toolkit essentially into shape to be able to do basic things without needing a lot of skill in that area. And that's something where then having a toolkit, we could actually take it to really skilled hands and say, this is the toolkit people are building with. Can we improve it to look really, really good? And that's something I think we've been kind of floating a bit more recently. There's not a specific campaign to go and find that person right now, but there's kind of the precursor steps of getting things in place to make that really doable. Had we had a full-time UI person, maybe not a UX, but a UI person previously, they would either have taken to drink or something heavier or strangled me and David, half the rest of the team, because of the speed with which we've been breaking things and putting them back together, and I think reworking ideas and stuff. So, a simple thing.
It's not just a CSS problem, right? Like one of the things that's changed over the last month is we've had more of a focus on systematizing components. It's continuing, right? Like if you click on someone's Identicon, you click on their address now in Red Square, you'll get this modal pop-up that gives you a list of things you can do with them, right? Like follow this person on Red Square or Twitter, add them as a contact. Well, maybe that's the same thing. Challenge them to a game. And that menu, that's got to be like, this is one of the things we want to offer to app developers. Like you write a tiny module, your module can add something to that menu. So write a tiny module and you will suddenly get people using it within Red Square. That's not just a CSS design, because you can't, like, we used to have all of these 25 different pop-ups that some dev coded. And sometimes that might have been me, but probably someone else, let's blame them, where, it's hacked up CSS for this specific use case. And the result is we'd have a table in this one component that's super ugly, a table in this other component that looks terrible. And, someone would spend time polishing one thing and they'd break 5 other things. So one of the things we've tried to do is move towards Saito class CSS structures. But it's not just a question of, oh, we need someone to do design from step 1. It's, we've actually been needing to, we kind of started with that. And then it's like, no, it's not working. We're not making the progress we need to, because we need to be building the things we're actually building. Find out what kind of modals we need, simplify them, and then say, these are what we need the CSS classes for. And I think it's been really tough for the dev team dealing with that, because they've got a lot of pushback in areas where, like, it's not at all someone's fault that they built something that works. But I think the team is kind of coming around, and people are now looking for opportunities to say, well, we're having to do this 5 times. We only need one modal for that. And what kind of modal should that be? So I'm hoping we can get back to that. I don't think we need to or want to hire someone full-time on UI UX. I think we need to develop a team culture where everyone is using the apps and using the system, and we just, we don't want bad X ourselves, bad UI UX ourselves. With that said, see us hiring someone to kind of go through the CSS stuff once we hit a point where we're like, okay, the applications are good enough.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between UX and UI there. We shouldn't be letting anything have a bad UX at this point. And we need to have the team across that as a whole. For UI, like for genuine polish, there's no getting away from the skills that, like, people with dedicated career to that can bring, and we'll bring that in as it makes sense.
Like, the calendar's coming back, scheduled future invites are coming back. How the hell do you invite someone to a game in a month? Do you create the game and then give the invite? Do you create the invite and then when the invite person it's stuff like this?
Cool. Just looking at time, we got 10 minutes. Do we have fiat money to pay developers, or do you sell Saito? When we say zero inflation, we mean it. We're not selling Saito to pay for anything at the moment. We have USD denominated reserves, and we have ways to OTC that if we need to pay someone in some kind of old-fashioned fiat, the team have options on how they get paid. The key important thing to me about this question is, no, we're not selling project funds or Saito in any way to support development.
I don't think we count the Saito as a resource financially when we're doing. Yeah.
No. No, there's ups and downs with liquidity provision. We have to say, like, because if you have a bunch of liquidity providing and then you move that moves, you could take some out and redeploy it, but that's not what we're doing. We don't count Saito on our books. So when we say roadmap covering for dev salaries, we mean that's what we got out of the raise and or earnings, etc.
Maybe I'll try to speed up. Best company projects to form a partnership. What are your strategy and tactics to achieve cooperation? We've had people reach in from the outside where they see the community and they see the activity and they see the platform and they want a piece of that, or they want to use it to market something they're doing. A lot of stuff in the blockchain space is kind of vapid. People are doing blockchain-y things and it doesn't make sense, and you talk to them about why. I'm glad that we're out of the need to talk to people about that. I've got some ideas. Maybe we'll talk about this in 2 weeks. I think there's some. I love what's coming. I'm teasing you again. It's great.
I think, yeah, we're not averse to working with people, but it's always like with exchanges, anything, it's got to be in the interest of the long-term future of the project and the community. And so, yeah, we've seen great things come of things like working with the Elrond community, mostly because there are some really, really smart folks around there who've been open to ideas, have listened, contributed, who, have pushed back and who've provided useful exposure and been, part of what we're doing. And, I'm talking about guys like Wesley, and a bunch of others who kind of always slip my mind. So we're very pro partnerships. It's just always a question of what's in it. There's a huge tendency in the industry to do double banner partnerships. Just to put the two logos next to each other and announce a partnership. And that's kind of part of this, what David was mentioning, this kind of announcement culture in crypto, because people want a stream of news because everyone's hoping to buy before and sell just after the critical piece of news. And that's not the sort of stuff we're orchestrating. If we enter a partnership with someone, it's with the intent of getting something done. And so, we're always looking for ways to achieve that, but we're not just going to do a, mindless partnership after partnership. We could hire someone and just get them to call around and organize to share logos with people if we really wanted to do that kind of thing without thinking it through.
I think gaming is one of the most interesting spaces once we've got leagues of crypto really well integrated. But we'll see. We're experimenting with a bunch of things, and I think it's going to become increasingly apparent. Someone can have an idea on the team, and they can be like, "I really want to work on this," and we're like, "Okay." If they really do want to work on it, that's how we're getting the stuff that people will use. I think Twilight Struggle is one of the games that people really come to organically. And one of the reasons for that is I like the game. And I was like, I would like to get this game up. The stuff that people put love into tends to have the best UI UX because people will go back and they'll fix the problems and they care. So we're doing a lot of experimentation. And we're trying to pay attention to what works. I really like Red Imperium, but it doesn't drive transaction volume. Play to earn. People might get paid to play games when the ad faucet is up. We're not going down the play to earn where we're going to be paying people money to play. No, screw that. We want to, no.
I agree. I think it just means you can't build something useful. The objective with all these things is to build real transaction volume and to create a real community and user base. And if we can't achieve that, then there's the question about why we tried or why we what strategy we used. Paying people to play who will just stop as soon as you stop paying them is, for one thing, contrary to the idea of zero inflation. It immediately implies inflation because you're dumping tokens on the market. Of course, we could just line people up and give them money to buy Saito. This is a ridiculous idea.
We could do what other networks do, and we say we need more volunteers to give us free money to pay for people to play games.
Could Saito have their own exchange on the network? I'm trying to fly through these now. Yes.
I think we can buy and sell. It's something we can look at. I'm interested in it because I think it's an interesting idea, especially if people are like, "Oh, it's hard to buy Saito and it's hard to buy this other stuff." No, we can enable that. Should we? It depends on the other stuff that we're working on. I think we've got a ton of good stuff. We're not planning to do this anytime soon.
When will we get CoinMarketCap to fix our supply information? I'll get someone on the team to refill in the spreadsheet again. They've rejected their own spreadsheet filled in by us twice or three times. The last time they didn't explain to me why. It's not worth our time wasting too much energy on dealing with them. If the community want to get behind us and help at CoinMarketCap and ask them why the information is wrong and if they can, from their end, get correct information. Because we've provided it.
Reading the stuff they put up, my guess is that they're like used to projects that are playing financial games with whether they have real tokens distributed or not in order to game the market cap. Like you sell 5%, you give 50% to this other guy, and you're like, oh, look, we've got a huge market cap. Push us up on that marketing list. So my guess is that it's just genuine skepticism in a predatory industry, and like they haven't necessarily done a deep dive on Saito. I think a lot of things will change in the next year because, go back a year, and George, like you've been here ages, and I think everyone who's been here a while is able to see that there is something transformative that's happening, but that it takes people time to understand. And I just say, let's all not forget that, because we got to keep our eye on the ball. Like CoinMarketCap, honestly, who cares? Like if these guys get it wrong, at some point, they're going to fix it. And until they fix it, well, maybe we can make some noise about how CoinMarketCap is appalling. And that can help us drive interest. And maybe it can attract people to Saito.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, pointing out that CoinGecko seem to have no trouble updating the information, and that maybe people should go there is possibly useful in terms of overall project health. Punching through things, I think just to clarify something, Georgi asked if a CX wanted to list Saito, will we refuse? Well, a couple of things. We can't stop them. It's not like we're telling them no. Any exchange that wants to list us can, and that's happened to us in several cases. A bunch of exchanges listed us, lower end ones, but they listed us just on launch, and then since, I think 10 or so exchanges have picked us up without talking one word to us since we started. So we're not refusing that in any way. The issue is they play a ridiculous game of wanting us to give them literally in the order of half to $1 million worth of tokens and USDT to list and very little in return. So it's that, and then what they want to do with that money that's the issue, not whether they offer. We have no objection if Binance want to list us, go for it. But are we going to pay them? Are we going to give the project to them for the listing? No. So, we're gonna make the decision. The thing is, right now we're moving in the right direction. Things are turning in our direction. They're going to keep turning in our direction for the next year, I think. And there's absolutely no reason to worry about this now. If someone's worrying about this now, that's like people coming, where are you going to list on Binance like a year ago? It's like, dude, you're a moon boy speculator. If you're this worried about this, go buy some fucking meme coin that they'll launch and dump on people and play that game. Like, you don't need to be here. But yeah, it's not that we don't think that it's important. We know it's important, and we're going to do it the right way. And I think people will see that in 6 months, Saito is in a much stronger position, and in a year, we're going to be in an even more stronger position. Let's punch through. Any questions? There's could Saito.io App Store be the next big thing? I think that's actually a really good one to give it a little bit more time to.
We've struggled with the App Store because it's one of the easier components to break. It's one of the more fragile applications. So if we run into trouble, we tend to disable it, and it confuses people who visit the site. So right now it's actually off. It's going to come back. I don't think it's a priority. I know Powell's done some module building. Other people have done module building. We're learning from them and us how difficult it is and how to fix it. I don't think we're in final form with how you build modules. I know that Dan and I both have thoughts of how to improve this. And we're learning a lot about CSS and HTML and JavaScript when you've got a component that may or may not exist that wants to insert a UI element in another component. component that may or may not exist. These aren't challenges most software projects have. We're actually getting good at solving them. So that kind of stuff, like the SDK in the roadmap, we say we're going to come back to the SDK probably in about 6 months. I think that's probably true. And the reason for the delay is that we're working on applications to try to make sure we're doing the right things with transaction volume. We don't want to stop and say, okay, let's fix the CSS and the dev issues because they're not huge.
Yeah, just to quickly underscore that, though, it's a good question because, yes, Saito is a very, very good tool for software distribution. And I think you'll see things coming up that make that even more possible in the near future, the next couple of weeks. So, yeah, it's something that we see as a big part of what you can do with Saito. It's just a matter of, getting all the pieces to align. There's a question here I'm not going to answer, which I think is interesting because it kind of underscores some things, which is a price prediction. And Spigo correctly says, the founders of good projects don't talk about such things. This is kind of funny because I think it underscores a little bit of the theme we get sometimes. Actually, if we did directly talk about price, not only is it something we don't do, but it would actually eliminate us from being eligible on some exchanges. So that's actually a thing that some of the exchanges look at is, do the founders talk about price? Because if they do, then it's clearly a security and we can't run it. So it's one of the things we ask people to keep in mind when they ask questions like this, and when we answer them obliquely or not directly, is actually sometimes there's two sides to it. Like people asking at the same time, do we pay devs in fiat or not? And then are we selling tokens, etc.? There's often, do we have enough devs? There's often two sides to it. And we're doing, I think people can see project performance. I think, we've got a track record of showing we can achieve that, but there's a lot of things to be balancing around these kind of things. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, when you're done, can I address the next question?
Yeah, I think that's I'm finished.
It's the same kind of thing. There are some questions where people are asking them, and it's like, to me, roles, that question comes across as like someone who's decided that token persistency is the end all and the be all of what we're doing, and it's like, if we move it, we're taking cheese away from you. And it's like, no, if we move it, there are going to be some damn good reasons why we move it. And I think a lot of people don't understand that, like, if you take a look at what we're actually doing, someone earlier asked a question about, well, what happens when we start moving all of the tokens on chain? Like, actually, financially, what happens to token price, tokenomics, the incentive structure? We're not focused on getting the Saito token to 10 cents. We are not focused on getting the Saito token to $1. We are focused on getting Saito into the top 3. And to do that, like, these questions, I think they're going to seem silly in retrospect. Like, it makes sense. We get it. And we're happy to have everyone here. But, like, we're really not focused on a 4-cent token. We're not focused, we can't orient ourselves that way. We have to orient ourselves on building the network and solving the problems. So, when is token persistence going to happen? Well, that's the roadmap. And the roadmap says there's a bunch of complexity, if you read it, around things like the advertising faucet. Like, we don't really want to look kind of subtly, we don't really want to start the advertising faucet until we've got token persistence with a high reaping threshold. Why is that? That's because when we start the token faucet, we're going to be bleeding out tiny amounts of tokens. But we don't want that to be mainstream token distribution because it's under development. So the ad faucet gets more relevant as the reaping threshold drops. Like, that's the curve that we're looking at. And at the same time, we've got this total unknown with the question of, well, what should we actually be doing? Because we've got the tokenomics, we've got a bunch of tokens that we can allocate for a bunch of things. Strategic partnerships, 10%. What strategic partnerships? Like, we're not seeing a bunch of industry, engagement yet where we look and we say, that's really worth giving them tokens. I could see with things like open staking where we'd say, look, if you really want to run an application on the network and you need to identify like 1 million Saito tokens to produce a block, and it's not a form of work, it's just if you attack the network and you've got to do that 50 times, well, we can fork and we can bleed you 50 million. Like, we might say, okay, well, that pool of tokens, what we're going to do is we're going to use a certain percentage of them, and we're going to require people to actually buy those tokens, but that's where that token amount comes from. These token questions, where are the tokens? Where do they come from? Like, you're asking us right now what's going to happen in 8 months? Like, that's crazy. We don't know. You know, you couldn't have asked me a year ago if we would be having this meeting on this date. Like, it's just nonsensical. So I hope this is a respectful answer, but, you know, looking at the roadmap, reading the documents, read them in the context of people who are serious about building a network, and we don't know the answers. Like, if we're looking and we're like, oh my God, we actually need to get on an exchange in the next 2 months, we will do that. And if it's like token persistence, actually, we need to do this in 3 months, we will change what we're doing, and we're focusing on that. But right now, like, you know, the target is 8 months, and the roadmap explains why. And you know, one thing we're not talking about, the roadmap doesn't talk about, is the outstanding tokens that are in the, like, in the tokenomics top. They're allocated. Like, no one here, we're not going to have a productive conversation about 20% foundation tokens. Like, that stuff's just off the table. Will they exist? Will they not exist? Well, we'll probably have a foundation. Like, you know, in team, we talk about this stuff as a success problem. It's a problem that you have to deal with when the problems that you're currently dealing with have been solved. So, yeah, I mean, it might help make things like the roadmap clearer. Yeah, I think for us dealing with the community, it is sometimes frustrating when people hyper-focus on this as if it's like, this is the end goal. And it's like, no, guys, that is not the end goal. The end goal is being a top-tier crypto, solving this stuff and having a scalable open network. Like, that's why we're doing this. Like, I'm pretty sure, I know for a fact Richard could make a lot more money doing other things. I probably could, but who knows? Richard?
Yeah, no, it's about actually fulfilling the goals of the, you know, many of the goals of the whole space, right? The old cypherpunk dreams, a genuine Web3, a blockchain that really does what it says on the box. And that's what we're setting out to do. Making that successful will have wonderful rewards for everyone who's involved, like most technical things, if you get them really right. But we're not short-term focused on particular price calls and things. No, you know, I think you can see from the way we've stewarded the project so far, we've got a bigger vision, and I think you can also see that it's worth looking carefully at and being part of. To that extent, and maybe to wind up, I'm going to misuse a question on the list combined with a question in the chat. Extended more details roadmap and when's next town hall? I think both David and I have had our heads really down, and it's been a hard-working couple of months. I also moved countries from China to Australia, so it's been a little bit hard to be available. Extended roadmap and more details, when the next town hall. I think both of us would like to be doing this more often, and one of the things we get out of having the dev team, and the benefits we reap out of having all the effort we put into the dev team and getting things working there, is that we'll have more time for things like this. I'm doing a session on Friday with someone. I think we're going to up our media output and stuff. So that's really a combined answer. Next town hall, I'd hope we can do one, a lot sooner than the gap between the last one.
Yeah, we've been busy. I think you guys are really going to love what's happening. Like, because there's the last time we did this, or 6 months ago, we could have a conversation. We could cover it in an hour. Like, like we haven't even talked about Quake, really.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. We've had more questions than we can answer, more attendees than ever for this. We can see more activity across socials, etc. So yeah, in terms of both those questions, we'll be back a lot sooner than the last break. I'm hoping we can do it within a month to 6 weeks. And for more details on the roadmap, this will be the place. Things are very fluid and moving fast. So, this kind of catch up is a great way to keep people up to date with what's going on in the project.
Maybe if we're closing one thing too, just kind of like skipping Pavel's question, performance tests against Red Square. It's like, well, we use it and we notice when it's broken.
I've been doing slightly more than that, by the way, on the back end to make sure we know what's going on.
We're not focused on hyperscalability because it's a success problem, right? Like a lot of the databases are SQLite right now, even on the server. Well, why is that? It's because, well, SQLite is the most versatile for compiling into the browser. So if we have it, if we're building by default on something that's most deployable, then that's the best position for us to be in. Scaling things up by replacing the database is like, it's a no-brainer. Of course, it's going to happen. Should we do it now, or should we fix all of this other stuff that's broken? What I wanted to say is that we really do pay attention when people complain and point out that stuff is wrong. It's not always that there's an easy solution. Like there's this one, someone has come in Red Square and they're like, there's this comment that comes and it's missing its parent. And it's like, well, actually, that's because we're a distributed system. Your browser has probably downloaded that comment, but it doesn't have the parent cached for some reason. That's probably what's happening, and we should probably fix that.
There's no great Twitter data center with all the information in it. It's distributed around the chain. It's decentralized.
Yeah, so, and like it's going to get worse with the peer-to-peer stuff, because when I join and I connect with Richard, Richard is probably going to send me the tweets that he likes. And so my friends start influencing what's on my feed, and the echo chamber problem gets worse. Just kidding. It gets better. Decentralized moderation. You can have friends in both camps.
I think this is the thing. It's not just that we're like, oh, look, you can do something that looks like Twitter but is really red on on a blockchain. It's no, this is genuine peer-to-peer. It's giving us modes of doing this kind of thing that are way beyond what people are thinking of with something like Twitter. And it's because we've got a model that doesn't require gatekeeping and rent seeking. Like someone asked before about like the joke question about the red check marks, but also about David mentioned about like how many likes can you give. The reason that the one like thing seems important is that Twitter creates, by controlling the central system and the database, they're trying to create value for themselves by limiting how much you can click. It's actually
you guys created, the dev team was like, oh my God, everybody wants like likes. We had to give them some pushback on this. We're like, they want to create a join table and they want to map, and we're like, look, if they're going to spend half a cent per like and it just shows up on some dude's notifications, like, okay.
And also, if you want a real measure of like, you want real value, don't let another person determine what's valuable because of limiting the clickability.
Yeah.
Add a feature where you can have paid likes. You pay inside it, right?
I was more thinking, I didn't want us to spend a day or 2 days of dev time locking down that feature, because I'm like, we've got other stuff we want to do.
Well, no, but I think this is we're starting to ramble into general side of philosophy, but this is actually really important, because like it becomes the question of like, why are things how they are, and what are we trying to change? And we're trying to change this thing where some central authority is determining, people's behavior on the network because they're trying to squeeze a dollar out of them, and we're turning it into people can just interact how they want. And there are ways of doing, limited liking, and you can do it a very sensible way, which is to have a cost associated with it. If that's interesting to people, they'll do it. If not, okay.
I was getting to a different point, which is that when people complain about stuff, we actually do notice, and it's super useful for us because it tells us what people care about. Like people care about of the new stuff we've come out. People care about Red Square. They care about Quake. Some of the other stuff, not yet. I'm really, so it helps us hone. It shows us what people are paying attention to.
We'll know the video call stuff is really starting to be useful when people start yelling at us that their call dropped or something. Then we know, like, okay, there's a
video
audience here.
Can be powerful, but it's not there yet. Like, it's just not there yet. The usability, it can be, but it's so. Yeah. We got to fix that. How is that in our hierarchy of things to fix? But yeah, complain. Post stuff on Red Square. Add Red Square to your phone. Yes. I use it on the treadmill because the treadmill is boring, but Red Square is not.
That's a great note to go out on. Thanks everyone for your time and attention today. Hit us up on Red Square. Always on Red Square. We love responding and interacting there. Chat on both Red Square and the arcade is a great place to see us. Telegram, others as well. Thanks.
Thank you
for your time, and we'll see you again hopefully sooner than last time.
Okay. Take care, guys.